1883. The state of Ohio, Adams County. A group of academics pulls their wagons to the base of a hill. They have shovels, pickaxes, and notebooks. They've come from Harvard. They carry the backing of the Smithsonian Institution. Their purpose is clear. Examine this strange earthen structure, document it, and explain it to the world. At the edge of the nearby village, an elderly Shawnee man watches them. He walks toward the academics as they unload their equipment. He doesn't speak right away. He waits. The academics notice him. They smile. They wave. The man doesn't smile back. He says one thing. "Don't wake the serpent." The academics glance at each other. They whisper among themselves. Superstition. Fear rooted in ignorance. These people don't understand science. The dig begins. 3 days later, the first member of the crew is found dead. The dig continues anyway. And from that day forward, everyone who has touched this ground has encountered something. Some experience dizziness. Some lose all sense of direction. Some describe a panic they cannot name. And some spend the rest of their lives refusing to talk about it at all. This is the story of Ohio's oldest secret. And that secret has never let anyone go. Go south through Ohio, about 50 miles east of Cincinnati. Wind through the narrow, curving roads of Adams County. The forests thicken. The towns thin out. As you descend toward Brush Creek Valley, what you see through your window looks completely ordinary. Trees, grass, soil. Nothing to separate it from thousands of other patches of Ohio countryside. You climb the hill, and it's still the same. Dirt, grass, trees. Then you go up to the observation tower, and then you see it. A serpent. Mouth open, coiling, impossibly large. 411 feet from end to end. The largest effigy mound ever discovered in North America. From the oval shape at its head, the egg, or perhaps the sun, resting in the creature's open jaws, to the tight spiral of its tail, it stretches across the hillside like something drawn in a single, unbroken gesture. But stop here for a moment. To see this serpent from above, you need a tower or an aircraft, which means the people who built it never once saw their own finished work. No balloon, no plane, no satellite image. Only earth, labor, and a plan that existed entirely inside their minds. That thought sits strangely in your chest. Think about the geometry. To form a perfect serpent silhouette across 411 feet, you first need a precise design. Then you need to transfer that design onto uneven terrain without a single map, measuring tool, or aerial reference. Hundreds of people moving thousands of tons of earth, shaping it, packing it down. The average height is around 5 feet. At certain points, it rises to nearly 10. And all of this was done at least 2,000 years ago. The Roman Empire hadn't yet reached Britain. Paper didn't exist in Europe. The wheel was still unknown across much of the world. And in Ohio, someone was drawing a serpent between the sky and the earth. But there's something else, something that pushes this story into entirely different territory. Serpent Mound doesn't sit on ordinary ground. Beneath it lies what geologists describe as a crypto-explosion structure, a geological impact formation roughly 3 miles across. Researchers debated its origin for decades. Meteor strike, volcanic event, deep crustal movement. A comprehensive geological study published in 2003 concluded that the formation beneath Serpent Mound bears the signature of a massive ancient impact event, one dating back hundreds of millions of years. The rock beneath this hill was permanently altered by that collision. Its composition, its pressure, its electromagnetic properties, all different from the surrounding landscape. The people who built this structure chose this specific ground. Was that a coincidence? Perhaps. But we also know that ancient peoples tended to build their sacred sites in places that felt powerful. Underground water, seismic activity, unusual terrain. These things registered in human bodies long before science gave them names. What this ground made people feel, thousands of years ago, may be exactly why they chose it. Then there's the question of the serpent itself. Why this animal? For the Shawnee people, the serpent is not simply a creature. It is the bridge between the world below and the world above. The embodiment of life and death in a single form. The one living thing that dies and is reborn each year, shedding its skin, beginning again. In Shawnee tradition, the great horned serpent, the one the legends name as guardian of the underworld, neither allows passage nor turns it away. It watches. This mound may not be a burial site. It may be a threshold. And some thresholds are built not to be crossed, but to be guarded. Who built Serpent Mound? This is one of the questions archaeologists have argued over since the 1800s. And the honest answer is, we still don't know for certain. The first serious candidate is the Adena people, a sophisticated culture that lived across Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, and Pennsylvania, roughly between 800 BC and 100 AD. The Adena are known for building earthen mounds, burying their dead inside them, conducting ceremonies, using specific animal symbols in their religious life. Their society was complex, their trade networks wide. But here's the problem with attributing Serpent Mound to the Adena. The mound contains almost no human remains. If this was a burial site, where are the dead? That absence pushed some archaeologists toward a second candidate, the Fort Ancient people, a culture that lived in the region from roughly 1000 to 1650 AD. In 2014, researchers from Ohio State University reanalyzed carbon samples taken from the mound and concluded that much of the visible structure was likely built or significantly renovated around 1,000 years ago, placing it squarely in the Fort Ancient period. But that answer is also incomplete. Because the Fort Ancient people disappeared too. Not through war. There's no record of a decisive conflict. No evidence of mass famine. The archaeological case for a large-scale migration is thin. At a certain point, the traces of this culture in the Ohio region simply stop, as if they left, or as if something else happened. In Shawnee oral tradition, there is a story that speaks to this disappearance. It describes a people who were guardians of the great serpent, caretakers of the threshold. When their work was done, they didn't die. They passed through the earth, and the mound remained as the seal of that passage. That is a legend, not a historical record. But legends have always carried seeds of something real. And sometimes, those seeds point toward exactly what archaeology cannot find. Consider the astronomical alignments. The head of the serpent and the oval in its mouth align almost perfectly with the direction of the setting sun at the summer solstice. The spiral of the tail points toward the winter solstice sunrise. Researchers have also identified correlations with the spring and fall equinoxes at specific points along the body's curves. Is this a calendar? An observatory? A ritual map connecting the sky above to the world below? All three interpretations have serious academic support. None has been proven definitively. And that persistent uncertainty is precisely what keeps Serpent Mound from becoming just another historical footnote. and keeps it feeling, even now, like something unfinished. By the mid-1800s, when European Americans began taking formal notice of the structure, the Shawnee and neighboring indigenous peoples had known about it for generations. This ground was sacred. You could come here, pray here, sit in its presence, but you did not dig. You did not disturb the earth. You did not approach the mouth of the serpent. Those rules existed for a reason, because these people knew what this ground was capable of. To understand what happened in 1883, you first need to understand the man who led the excavation. Frederick Ward Putnam. Born 1839, Harvard-educated. Director of the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology from 1875 onward. One of the most respected figures in American archaeology and anthropology during his era. A man who cataloged tens of thousands of artifacts across his career and wrote hundreds of field reports. Precise, methodical, not given to sentiment or speculation. When Putnam first visited Serpent Mound in 1883, he hadn't yet planned to excavate. He came to observe, and something changed in him when he saw it. This detail matters because of what his notes reveal. Putnam's field writing across his career is consistent. Technical language, measurements, observations, no embellishment. But the pages describing his first visit to Serpent Mound carry a different quality. A hesitation. Gaps between thoughts that aren't there in his other writing. His notes from that visit suggest, in his own careful phrasing, that the site produced in him something he found difficult to name. An unease that his usual vocabulary wasn't built to hold. A man like Putnam didn't write that way about a pile of dirt. And yet he continued. By autumn of 1883, an excavation team had been assembled. Smithsonian support was confirmed. The crew included experienced archaeologists, students, and field workers. The focus would be the oval feature, the egg in the serpent's mouth, and the area immediately surrounding the head. The local community had issued their warnings. Those warnings were not acknowledged. According to some accounts, within the first 3 days of digging, a member of the work crew was found dead. The official record, such as it is, categorizes this as an accident. The details are vague. A fall, a sudden illness. The cause is never made specific. What is striking is what's missing. Putnam's own field notes contain no reference to this death whatsoever. A man who documented the weather, the soil composition, the name of every worker. Silent on the death of one of those workers. There are 2 explanations for that silence. The first, he considered it minor. An accident with no bearing on the work. But that explanation doesn't hold against the character of a man who recorded everything. The second, he chose not to record it. Because recording it would have required him to record the context. And the context was something he wasn't prepared to put into writing. The dig continued. But the tone of Putnam's notes shifted. By the summer of 1884, while working inside the oval feature, the team encountered something. What exactly they found remains disputed. A portion of Putnam's notes from this period survives in the Peabody Museum archives, but several pages are missing. Whether lost over time or never written, no one can say for certain. What does survive is a letter Putnam wrote to a Harvard colleague near the end of 1884. In it, discussing Serpent Mound, he hints that certain aspects of the site may not yet be ready to be explained. A phrase that sits entirely outside the vocabulary of scientific fieldwork. Archaeologists explain what they find, or they say they found nothing. They don't suggest that findings are waiting for the right moment. By 1885, Putnam had shifted his focus entirely from excavation to preservation. Using the damage caused by treasure hunters and curious visitors as justification, he organized a group of wealthy Boston women to fund the purchase of the land. In 1887, the property was acquired and donated to the state of Ohio. Serpent Mound became one of the first archaeologically protected sites in American history. Putnam moved with remarkable speed and personal determination to make this happen. Nothing else in his career resembles this level of urgency around a single site. He never excavated Serpent Mound again. He continued to visit, but the tools stayed out of the ground. And somewhere in the surviving edges of his personal archive, in a margin note that researchers have cited without full context, appear the words he had heard on that first day. Don't wake the serpent. There are 3 ways to explain what has happened at this site, across nearly 2 centuries of documented encounters. Each holds together internally. Each points toward a different kind of truth. And none of them fully closes the question. The first explanation: what's underneath the ground? Recall the geological formation beneath Serpent Mound. The 2003 geological study identified the presence of rare, shocked mineral formations within the impact structure. Materials that form only under the extreme pressure of a massive collision event. In practical terms, the bedrock beneath this hill carries electromagnetic properties that differ measurably from the surrounding landscape. Researchers conducting magnetic field surveys in the area have recorded consistent anomalies, small but repeatable. Does that affect the human brain? Neuroscientist Michael Persinger spent decades studying the neurological effects of weak magnetic fields. His experiments, while contested, demonstrated that low-level magnetic stimulation applied to the temporal lobe could produce in some subjects disorientation, loss of directional sense, and an overwhelming feeling of presence. The sense that something or someone is nearby. These results were popularized under the nickname the God Helmet. They remain debated in academic literature, but they have not been dismissed. Does the anomaly beneath Serpent Mound reach that threshold? We don't know for certain. But consider this. The people who chose this ground likely observed it for generations before building anything on it. They noticed what happened to people here. And rather than avoiding it, they built around it. Not to contain it, but to mark it. To say, this place is not like other places. Treat it accordingly. If this theory is correct, the mound is not a monument of belief. It is a marker placed over a source of power. The second explanation: 2,000 years of accumulated meaning. This one is less concrete, but possibly more significant. Anthropologists describe what they call sacred site psychology, the idea that a location transformed by sustained collective belief across generations doesn't just hold symbolic meaning. It becomes something different. Every person who approaches a place with reverence teaches the next generation to do the same. Every ceremony adds a layer. Every act of fear or awe or grief deposits something into that ground. Serpent Mound has been treated as sacred for at least 2,000 years. The Adena, the Fort Ancient, the Shawnee, the broader woodland cultures. Generation after generation came to this hill with their most serious intentions. Rituals were conducted. Prayers were made. The full weight of human spiritual life was directed at this specific patch of earth, repeatedly, for 2 millennia. The Harvard academics who arrived in 1883 carried none of that. They approached this place with curiosity, not reverence. And perhaps that collision, a site saturated with 2,000 years of concentrated human meaning, suddenly entered by people who treated it as an object of study, produced something no one had anticipated. Putnam's shifting language points here. A precise, unsentimental man begins writing in ways his own training didn't prepare him for. That gap between what he knew how to say and what he was actually experiencing is exactly what this theory would predict. The third explanation: what was deliberately kept quiet. This is the most contested reading and the most uncomfortable. A number of independent researchers and investigative journalists have argued that the Smithsonian's 19th-century excavations across Ohio, including at Serpent Mound, produced findings that never entered the institution's public record. The specific claim: artifacts and structural evidence recovered from within and around the mound did not match what would be expected from standard Adena or Fort Ancient archaeology. None of these claims have been fully verified. But what is documented is this: the Smithsonian's field records from the 1883 to 1887 period at Serpent Mound are incomplete. Daily field logs are missing for certain stretches. Some cataloged items cannot be located in the existing collection. Putnam's private correspondence, portions of which are known to have remained separate from official Smithsonian channels, has never been fully made available. Institutions suppress what they cannot explain, or what they have explained and chosen not to share. Those are two very different things. The first is ignorance. The second is a decision. Which one is harder to accept? Serpent Mound today is a state park, managed by the Ohio History Connection. There's a walking path, an observation tower, a small museum building. Every year, thousands of visitors come. They climb the tower, look down at the shape below, take photographs, eat lunch on the grass. Children run across the hillside. Everyone drives home. But some of them describe something different. These accounts began accumulating in the 1990s, in travel forums, regional Ohio newspapers, and eventually on review sites and personal blogs. They are not paranormal claims. None of them involve apparitions or supernatural encounters. They are quieter than that, more physical. And they repeat. A significant number of visitors report intense dizziness near the oval feature, the egg in the serpent's open mouth. Some describe it as sudden, as if a single step shifts the ground beneath them. Others describe it as a slow building pressure, a heaviness that gathers as they stand in that specific location. Multiple visitors have written about cameras and phones ceasing to function while they were on or near the mound, then returning to normal once they moved away. This particular account appears dozens of times across unrelated sources. But the most consistent report is the loss of direction. More than one visitor has described standing on the path near the oval feature and suddenly being unable to determine which way they were facing. A brief but complete spatial disorientation in a place they could see clearly around them. It lasts seconds, or perhaps a minute. Every person who describes it uses a version of the same word: unsettling. The geological theory connects directly here. If the magnetic anomalies beneath the mound are real and consistent, every one of these experiences fits within a known physiological framework. Magnetic field disruptions can affect the vestibular system, the mechanism in the inner ear responsible for spatial orientation and balance. Electronic equipment is also sensitive to localized magnetic variation. Science has not confirmed this connection for Serpent Mound specifically, but it hasn't ruled it out either. In 2001, a small team conducting a geological ground survey near the mound was working close to the oval feature when one researcher lost consciousness without warning. He fell. He recovered within minutes. The team halted work, and he was taken to a hospital. Medical evaluations found no cardiac or neurological cause. His blood work was normal. His EKG was clean. Imaging showed nothing unusual. He recovered fully. He didn't return to the project. In the years that followed, he spoke about the experience rarely. He wasn't a public figure. But a colleague from that team, writing years later in an academic blog, described the one thing the researcher had said about what he experienced in those moments. When I closed my eyes, I was moving down a very long corridor. There was something at the end of it. I didn't want to see what it was. Is that a description of a hallucination produced by a disrupted vestibular system and an oxygen-deprived brain? Or is it a description of a threshold? In Shawnee tradition, the great serpent guards the entrance to the world below. Those who approach too closely sometimes cannot return. Those who do return leave something behind. Putnam's final pages suggest he understood this, in whatever way a 19th-century Harvard archaeologist could allow himself to understand it. He didn't write it down. Instead, he closed the ground, protected it, made sure no one would dig there again. That may be the most scientific decision he ever made. Serpent Mound is still there. 411 feet, at least 2,000 years. The same form, the same silence. Thousands of years ago, someone placed something in this ground, drew a serpent across a hillside, connected the sky above to the world below in a shape that has never eroded, never collapsed, never been explained away. They built it and they left, but they left something behind. We don't know what it is. Archaeology hasn't reached it. Geology is getting closer but hasn't arrived. The oral tradition names it, but cannot prove it. Frederick Ward Putnam protected this place, yes, out of genuine scientific responsibility, but perhaps also because of what he encountered here. Because a man who documented everything chose to go silent. A man who excavated sites across a continent put his tools down at this one and never picked them up again. He sealed the ground, called it preservation, built a legal structure around it to make sure it stayed closed. Maybe the name was preservation. Maybe the reason was something else. This place is open to visitors every year. You can walk the path. You can climb the tower. You can stand at the edge of the oval feature and look down at the mouth of the serpent. When you do, take a moment. Feel what's under your feet. You probably won't feel anything. Most people don't. But some people did. And what they felt reminded them of only one thing. This is not just a hill. Have you ever heard this legend before? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Because here, at the Urban Legends, we don't just tell stories. We uncover the truths that history has tried to hide. A new legend is coming soon. Until then, look a little closer, question everything, and remember, some legends don't live in the past. They're right beside you. Mortal World, Immortal Legends.